Hello everyone, this is Taylor Z here again, and today I'm going to talk to you all about my personal favorite Thomas and Friends episodes. I've had this idea in mind for quite a while, and I thought maybe now was a better time to do it than never. Keep in mind, these episodes are based entirely off of my own opinions and is in no way a top 20 best or anything like that. But enough rambling about that. Let's just get right on into my top 20 favorite Thomas and Friends episodes. Number 20, Percy James and the Fruitful Day. As a kid, I was obsessed with this episode. Mainly because it came from one of my favorite tapes, James Goes Buzz Buzz. But I guess you could say I was a sucker for the Percy and James dynamic, as I'm sure there are many of us that do enjoy that. I just love seeing these two go at each other, only for one or both to get their comeuppance in the end. I do, however, like the overall meaning of the story that just because you or we may try to help someone out of a jam, things are still bound to go wrong. But you're still really useful nonetheless, as Thomas points that out in the end. Also, I really enjoy listening to the music, particularly the harbor theme. It's a nice, calm little piece that never really gets old. I could watch this episode literally over 20 times and just never get bored with it. It's that good. Number 19, You Can't Win. This one is a definite out of all the Duke stories we've received. I have a big amount of respect for Duke, given all that he's been through. But you must be asking yourselves, why this one in particular? Is it the way George Carlin did Duke's voice, perhaps? Or maybe was it just the beautiful shots we saw throughout the episode? Well, to tell you the honest-to-goodness truth, I don't have a straightforward answer. It's just a really beautiful-looking episode. Now, that's not to say that I don't care for the other Duke episodes like Grandpa for Sleeping Beauty, because I enjoy those episodes very much. Being that my least favorite is Bulldog, I could really give a damn about that one. It's just that this episode alone stands out to me more. I mean, the fact that we're looking at poor Duke struggling to get his work done, but he's determined more than ever to not let his friends down. You have to give him some kind of praise for that. But my favorite part about this episode is definitely the end, where Stuart gets what's coming to him after teasing old Duke. A really great moral that not only he, but even Falcon could even learn from time to time. Never, ever, ever doubt your elders. Because you never know what tricks they may still have bubbling in their boilers. Number 18, Thomas the Babysitter. This episode is a true pleasure to watch. I remember when season 19 was just rolling around, and this was the only episode I was extremely hyped for, and it really did not disappoint. What makes this episode even more enjoyable for me is how, thinking back to when I was a kid, I used to think to myself, how cool would it be to have a baby character featured in Thomas? It's mind-blowing to know how a good portion of this episode I was able to predict with some changes here and there. Yes, I would have loved to see if maybe this could have worked out better with the models, but now I actually think it works better for the CGI series. And while I do admit that, I can see why the generic baby sounds can be a little annoying to some, it doesn't necessarily ruin the episode for me. Overall, I can't really say anything else about it other than I think it's fantastic. I love the scenery, I love the music, and I especially love the character dynamic between Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle trying to calm the baby. At least now they know what new parents go through when they have newborn children, don't they? Number 17, Halloween. Oh my god, this episode is just wow. I remember watching this episode first when it aired on PBS Kids, just as season 8 was just starting to air, and I had the massive goosebumps through its entirety. And whenever I watched my Solar Celebration DVD, I could not wait to get to this episode. Everything about it is just freaking awesome! This is actually one of the very few episodes where I can tolerate Emily's behavior, Whereas her other main Season 8 roles, she was just a straight-up bitch, and unfortunately was like that throughout the rest of the series. But in this one, I'm actually okay with it. Even Thomas's character I'm alright with. Truthfully though, I think the best part about this episode is definitely the music. I just really love how it hyped up most of the scenes, like Thomas and Emily first entering the smelters, or the whole chase scene towards the end. Again, I just love everything about this episode. I love the dynamic between Thomas and Emily, the spooky atmosphere on the sets, and especially the bone-chilling music. A very big kudos to Dave Ingham for writing a very well-written spooky episode. Number 16, Percy's Chocolate Crunch. I can't even tell you how many times I've probably watched this episode off of my Chocolate Crunch tape. I remember when my younger sister and I were sitting in the living room one year, and of all days, we got this as an Easter gift. Hey, what more could you ask for? Would sure put you in the mood, wouldn't it? Now you may notice, this is actually the only episode I have from Season 6. Now that's not to say that I don't hate the season itself, it's just that not a lot of episodes can really top what I have on my top 20 list. Personally, I do think that Season 6 is overhated, and I know it's probably because of Alec Baldwin's lame-ass narration and so forth, but I don't ever refer to those. I just stick with the UK, and most of the stories still hold up pretty fair. But anyways, back to the episode. You just have to feel so bad for Percy. All he really wants is just to be clean while doing his work, but the dude can't catch a break. But of course, the best thing about that episode is the infamous chocolate factory crash. And holy cow, I have never seen anything like that ever, and it was just crazy. Even Percy covered in chocolate has me dying every single time. I just hope nobody was in that factory though. But overall, this is definitely one of the more wackier episodes of Season 6, and I could watch this over and over and over again. Number 15, Buzz Buzz. No, this isn't because James is my favorite character of the show. This is just a very uniquely styled James episode. Why? Well, 2 reasons. 1, I love the short dynamic between James, Trevor, and Duck. We don't normally see James interact with these characters, so it's pretty cool for the time being given the short amount of screen time. But the other reason is the cartoony animation they use for the bees. You'd never think we'd see anything like this in Thomas of all things, and it played out really well. Of course, I won't lie when I say this was another one of those episodes that kinda had me scared, all because of James's scream. I mean, wouldn't you be scared too if you heard this for the first time? George Carlin definitely intensified that, didn't he? Nowadays, I just find it hilarious. But overall, I never get tired of this episode, and it is definitely by far one of my all-time favorite James-related stories. Number 14, Love Me Tender. Apart from Break Van, this is Donald and Douglas at their best, hands down. It was such a relief to see these two amazing Scotties return after so long. And no, I do not count Sodor's Legend as their return, quote-unquote, because they were just thrown in there for fan service. I count this episode as their true welcome back debut. I just love the brotherly dynamic between them, mainly because it's kind of funny watching them bicker over the little things, which can make them very relatable to some fans. And even though they may get cross with one another, you can still see that they very much care for each other regardless of whomever may be in trouble, as displayed previously in Twin Trouble. And of course, who can forget about that wonderfully recreated theme for them? It's outstanding to listen to. It's definitely one of my favorite things out of the whole show. Overall, this episode is so heartwarming, and it's truly the Scotties at their finest. A very big thanks to Davy Moore for bringing our beloved twins back properly. Number 13, Toby and the Flood. Wow, what an action-packed episode this is. I mean, my God, it was over the top, but it was done so brilliantly. However, this was the episode that did introduce me to Season 5, and it sent my anxiety levels through the roof. How? Let me explain. I remember when my parents and I had gone to Toys R Us to look for just anything new Thomas merch related, and we came across Races, Rescues, and Runaways. Well, we immediately bought it, and we took it home to my grandmother's. But after watching the first couple of minutes, between the unsettling atmosphere and very ominous music, I was starting to feel a tad uncomfortable. And then, of course, when the dam breaks, and Toby being one of my favorite characters as a kid, watching him in a perilous situation like that horrified me. I was so frightened I told my parents, turn it off, because I just couldn't handle the suspense. And unfortunately, not only by that episode, but a small handful of others, I never wanted to go anywhere near Season 5. I just couldn't handle all those suspenseful moments. Yes, I did miss out on quite a lot, but years down the road, I did give it another shot, and now Season 5 is by far one of my favorite seasons. But going back to the episode, the suspense with Toby is just heart-pounding, like, oh my God, is he gonna be okay? And yes, I know the episode itself is unrealistic as hell, and I know some people complain that Toby just sits there. I get it. But if you overlook all of that, it definitely is a heart-stopping, suspenseful, amazingly written story that I could watch over and over and over. Number 12, Trust Thomas. I know some of you are probably thinking, why this of all episodes? It's got plot holes and this and that. To be perfectly honest, I don't really care about any of that. You gotta understand, it was one of my favorites to watch on my Trust Thomas tape, and being the basic bitch that I was, Thomas was my favorite character as a kid, and I just loved seeing him on screen. But obviously my favorite thing about the episode was the crash. Whether it is or isn't realistic, I don't care. I still think it's a pretty cool crash. Plus that toad is hilarious. I don't necessarily see why people were confused with the whole plot itself. It was pretty straightforward, even as a kid, but I guess that's just me. If you really don't care for this episode, that's fine, I totally understand. But for me, the nostalgia is still there, and it is still a timeless classic just for me.
The toad, who was looking forward to a ride home, noisily agreed.
Number 11, Percy's Promise. Wow, was this episode common to run into back then. It appears on like 5 different Thomas tapes. I mean, was it really that big of a fan favorite? Who knows? All I know is that whenever this episode came on, I was immediately excited, as it was one of my very favorite Percy-related episodes. Now, I understand that this was supposed to be before Percy takes the plunge, and some people are pissed at that. But for some odd reason, to me personally, it just seems like it fits into Season 3 more. I don't see it being a Season 2 related episode. It's sort of like the same situation with Henry and the Elephant. It just seems to fit the season it's in, whether it makes sense or not. But anyway, I definitely love to listen to the storm theme as Percy takes the children home. That and the ominous setting makes it a little unnerving, like, oh man, are they really gonna get home safely? And how the hell did that model not get damaged in the water? That's something we may never find out. Oh well. But even so, Percy never gave up, and he did prove that even in big situations like this, once again, he is a really useful engine. Very enjoyable episode in my book. Number 10. Ghost Train. I realize that this is a legendary fan favorite of the Thomas series, but I can tell you now that this was one of the many Thomas episodes before Season 5 that terrified me as a kid. And you can understand why. Every time I would watch my Percy's Ghostly Trick tape and the Thomas anthem was over, I knew what was coming next. Just the beginning alone had me already scared between the music and the spooky ghost train scene. And things only got more intense with the infamous ending, apart from Thomas's face that also scared the ever-living hell out of me. It was these elements that had me ducking behind the couch every single time. Hell, there were even times where I couldn't even sleep at night. But nowadays, whenever this episode comes on, I just get so giddy and excited whenever it comes up. I now love that kind of suspenseful stuff. The music is really entertaining to listen to, and the sets are... wow! Everything about this episode is just amazing. It has definitely earned its keep as a fan favorite. Number 9. Heroes. To me, I feel like this episode really brought out the best in Bill and Ben. From the time they were first introduced to where they are now, we've always known them as these cheeky little devils who love to cause mischief for the other engines. But what about in emergencies? Would we ever see them actually be serious for once? Well, yes. The episode towards the end really does put their bravery to the test, and they passed with flying colors. That's some pretty interesting character development for the twins. I wish we would have gotten more episodes like that in CGI, but I'm not complaining too much. Overall, I think this is a very well-written Bill and Ben story that will always be a favorite of mine to watch. Number 8. All at Sea. Where do I even begin with this amazing episode? It's so relaxing and so relatable as hell. Of course, in Duck's perspective. I'm sure there are lots of us out there that have big dreams that we'd like to accomplish in life, and that's why I think this episode really should relate to a lot of us. I really do like the dynamic between Percy and Duck in this one. I mean, Duck's just kinda laid back, having his dreams and thought, and then there's Percy, who'd really just rather be an engine more than anything, which I can kinda see where he's coming from. Really wish we could get more episodes like that with these two. The music, once again, is very soothing to listen to, and I just love some of these shots with Duck. I will never, ever forget about this episode for as long as I live. And before I say my next episode, tell me, am I not the only one who gets happy goosebumps whenever I hear this line?
Duck still wonders about the lands beyond the horizon, but I think he knows that sometimes the best travels are those we can only dream about. Don't you?
Number 7. Brake Van. Remember how I said Love Me Tender was Donald and Douglas at their finest? Well, this episode is no exception, and once again, it does not disappoint, especially with these two. Both of these devilishly clever Scotties are savage in this one. From Donald putting the brake van in his place, and Douglas, well, killing him practically. They obviously take no shit from anybody, and I have massive amounts of respect for them. Not for nothing, but I really love the way George Carlin does their voices.
You're a muckle nuisance. It's to leave you behind I be wanting. Anyone would think that Donald had had his accident on purpose. I hear tell about an engine and some tar wagons.
By far, they are definitely some of my favorite voices that George has ever done. This is another really well-written episode with everyone's two favorite Scottish twins. Number 6. Henris Forest. Okay, I understand that this has become a very controversial episode, all because of one specific person and his opinions. Look, I'm not gonna dig too deep into that because I don't care about said person's opinions. Anyway, what I really appreciate about this episode is how everybody after the storm pitches in to save the forest, even though it looks like Henry has given up hope. And that generally is heartbreaking to see Henry like that. It makes you stop and think, what if we were in Henry's place at one point in our lives? And what if we lost something special to us? And the music, ugh, very disheartening as, again, you really feel for Henry, and all we want is to see him happy again. This is truly a very beautiful episode that really needs a lot more praise. Number 5. Special Attraction. Another very uniquely styled story, I must say. Seeing as how it not only focuses on one engine, but 2 engines, that being Toby and Percy. Now, I could see why that would be confusing to some because, well, through the first part of the episode, we just jump right into Toby's story with him being the special attraction in the parade only for him to be denied, and then all of a sudden we just jump right over into Percy's story with Bulstrode. I'll admit it's a tad confusing, but it's still really enjoyable to sit through nonetheless. I think the best thing, though, about this episode is how George Carlin definitely does Bulstrode's voice. I'm in stitches every time I hear him do certain lines.
Come on, come on. Why aren't you cars where you should be? Oh, I'm sinking.
As I said before, while this may be a tad confusing to some fans, and it probably could have been made into possible 2 stories, I still think it's pretty good for what it is, and it's by far my very favorite of Season 4. Number 4. The Flying Kipper. How could this episode not be on anyone's top 20 list? It's amazing! I will admit, Henry has kind of bounced around from being a favorite to not being a favorite as the series progressed. But after watching this legendary classic time and time again, he definitely deserves a spot. I mean, I'm amazed by the beautiful shots and wonderful music every single time I watch this episode. Especially the unforgettable Flying Kipper theme, which warms my heart every time. Even the crash, which is definitely the best we've seen on screen, still manages to give me goosebumps. This is definitely one of Henry's finest episodes that I will never stop watching. It is definitely a remarkable masterpiece of Season 1. Number 3. An Engine of Many Colors. What? A Big Real Big Adventures episode in your top 20? Yes. Well, let me explain. Personally, I think it's a very good continuation from where we kind of left off with the fastest red engine on Sodor and a shed for Edward. The way Michael White wrote the episode just gave me such a big throwback to the classic series, even if that was his given intention. But it just played out fabulously. I love seeing James in all the different colors, being that silver was my favorite one, and I am glad that he did learn his lesson in the end. At least, I hope so. This is definitely one of the more tolerable episodes that we've received from Series 22, and I will gladly pick it over all the other crap ones we've gotten. And even though I have to feel a tiny bit bad for my boy, tell me something else. Are we ever gonna see a crash as crazy as this ever again? Number 2. Thomas's Train. Okay. Yes, I know the story is questionable, I get it. I understand that Thomas should have felt the weight of the coaches behind him at first, but I'm going to argue that I feel like Thomas was just excited, as per usual with his character, and he just wasn't being patient. That's something that we can expect from someone like Thomas. I don't know what it is, but somehow to me, watching him screw up, in a way, is kind of funny. And I hate to throw this in there, but I'm going to anyway, cause I don't care. I will admit that my heart does break for Thomas every time I do hear this line.
Poor Thomas was so sad he nearly cried.
Watching this back when I was a kid, being the basic bitch that I was, again, all I really cared for with this episode was just seeing my favorite blue tank engine on screen. I understand if there's a lot of you out there who don't particularly care for or even like this episode. That's fine, but in my case, it's still a real joy to watch to this very day. Now, before I get to my number 1 favorite episode, let me just show you some honorable mentions that, well, were very, very close to making the list. And now, my number 1 favorite Thomas episode is Thomas, Percy, and the Post Train. This was another very common episode to run into back in the day, and I'm glad it appeared on the many Thomas tapes I owned because this episode is gorgeous. I love it to death. Any Thomas episode that happens at night is amazing to watch, but it doesn't come nearly as close to this. I just love how beautifully lit the sets are with the night and the sunrise scenes. And of course, Mike and Junior obviously outdid themselves with the Post Train theme, and it has become my very favorite piece of Thomas music in the entire show. I could go on and on about how fantastic this episode is. It's just a very enjoyable and very beautiful story that has stuck by me for so long, and it will always be my number 1 favorite for the entirety of the Thomas and Friends series.